So before I started, I identified the NGSS standard that went along with this activity, which was to develop a model to describe the cycling of water through Earth systems driven by energy from the sun and the force of gravity. And then it has a clarification statement that says there's an emphasis on the ways that water changes its state as it moves through the multiple pathways of the hydrologic cycle. And a quick Google search proved that infiltration is definitely part of the hydrologic cycle, so I knew I was ready to get started. So for the Imagine stage, I consulted two different resources, and I have links to those resources pasted below. And then the plan stage, I started gathering my materials. I had 4 mason jars, a screwdriver, duct tape, 2 different kinds of plastic cups, a measuring cup, a Sharpie, scissors, aluminum foil, and a shovel. And my plan was I was going to poke holes in the bottom of the cups and affix those with the duct tape to the mason jars. And then I would put the soil and some different objects into the cups and let water run through those, and it would run through the holes into the jar so that I could see the color of the water that would come out, so that I could judge the infiltration and the runoff. So now I started the creation process, and I tried first using the screwdriver to poke holes in the small clear plastic cups. I wanted to use clear cups so that I could see the water running through the soil, but it was hard to put holes in these cups without shattering the cups completely because they were pretty hard. So I quickly realized that I had to use a different kind of cup. So I used the red solo cup, and that was a lot easier to use the screwdriver to poke a hole in the bottom of. I used a smaller screwdriver first to make a little hole, and then I grabbed a larger one so I could make the hole nice and big so that the water could flow through easier. And I did this a total of 4 times since I was creating 4 different watersheds. I also tried to be precise, and I made sure that all of the holes were about the same size because I didn't want more water flowing through one of the cups than another. So here's where I started to affix the cups to the mason jars. And again, I did this a total of 4 times since I was having 4 different watersheds. I then labeled the 4 different cups so that I wouldn't mix up the 4 different materials that I was putting in each. In the first cup, I was going to put soil and grass. The second cup, I was going to put soil and mulch. The third cup, I was going to just put soil. And the last cup, I was going to put soil and tinfoil, since that was one of the suggested materials on one of my resources that I used. Now that I had all my materials ready, I could start setting up the different watersheds. So first I took the tinfoil and I poked little holes in it because the water wasn't going to flow through it otherwise. And then I put that in the bottom of the soil and tinfoil cup, poured the soil on top of it, and then I used the correct materials in the other cups. At this point, I filled up the large measuring cup with water, and I marked off a little line on one of the smaller plastic cups so that I could make sure it was pouring the same amount of water into each cup. The water started flowing through the bottoms of the red cups as soon as I poured it in, and I wanted more water, so I actually did this twice. So then I examined each cup and jar, and I saw that the one with soil and grass had the clearest water, so I determined that was the most infiltrated. And when I looked inside the cup, I could see that it was mostly dry on the inside, so there wasn't too much water still sitting on top. So the water with the soil and mulch was a little bit darker, but still dry on the inside, so I could see the water still went through pretty well. The water from just the soil was actually the darkest of all, and had a lot of sediment in the bottom, and you could see there was a ton of water still sitting on top even after a few minutes of me pouring the water into the cup. The water in the last cup with the soil and tinfoil looked about as clear as the one in the cup with just the soil and mulch. I think the tinfoil with the holes in it kind of acted like another filter, and that's why not as much soil came through. And you can see the soil in this cup was definitely a lot drier than the cup with just soil, even though I had poured the water into this cup last. Here's some side-by-side views of the infiltrated water that went through the simulated watersheds. And in my opinion, the one that did the best job at maximizing infiltration and minimizing runoff was the soil and grass, and the one that did the opposite was just the soil by itself. These are the STEM practices that I think were aligned with this activity. The red is the ones that are most aligned, and the yellow is the ones that are somewhat related to this activity.